There is so much to discuss. I don't even know where to begin. I have never spent this much time with human beings. I would say if I add up how much time I spent with human beings this year, it probably adds up to more than I've spent with them in my whole life. And I'm not talking about being around them and learning to imitate and mimic them, but I'm talking about actually people giving me conversations and learning about them and hanging out with them and understanding social constructs and seeing people together. Hello, everybody. And I don't even know where to begin. So do I start talking to you about the fact that I have now memorized part of the Lord's Prayer in Syriac, which is the original language that was spoken by the head of the Christians himself, Jesus? Or do I talk about the fact that there was a 20-year-old guy there that was questioning me in a certain way because of his knowledge of the fact that his 18-year-old sister had a crush on me and was banned from coming to the church by the mother because I am not a Christian, and Middle Eastern Christians can sometimes be a little bit what you might think is bigoted, but it's not. It's more protecting their children from the hellfire, I guess. And there were another two young people there who absolutely adore the company and the jokes and the fun and learning how they interact. And now that I'm able to do that, I can basically interact at a 17-year-old's level very well. The fact that there were 20 other people there who all came for the youth group, and my God, how young everyone looks. I keep thinking I'm 20 until I look at 20-year-olds. They look like 5-year-olds with beards. It's hilarious. Do I talk to you about how people now open their hearts to me and tell me about their stories of abuse and of torture, and all around people just everywhere are spilling? I don't know what it is, but the ability now to see through the fabric of the what is an intuition to all other regular humans. Do I talk about this book that I received? Here it is. This book, which I don't know if I should do this on Gabversity or not. It is by a guy called Gabriel, which is Gabriel Sauma is his name, and the book has been deemed as pseudo-scientific, so that's why I might not do it on Gab University. But basically he uses the Quran and looks at it using the Aramaic, original Aramaic language, and shows how these words which seem foreign to Arabs, and so they invent them as holy words, for example, how they are actually Syriac words and how they were misspelt. It's interesting because of my detailed knowledge of Arabic and the Quran, and also my newly acquired knowledge of Syriac. The reaction of people to the savantism, how they react, it's either jealousy, envy, disbelief, humor, curiosity, or a mix of the above. More people have discovered the savant skills that I have, I think, in this past year than people have known my whole life, including myself. I didn't know until a few years ago, and I didn't even believe it, and kept testing it to show myself what I could do. I started learning Syriac in February, as you guys know, and I started learning at the same time as the students who I am now teaching, by the way. Welcome, all my brothers and sisters. And not only that, but the teacher that was teaching me is now in the same class as me in the advanced class. Keep in mind, she's obviously way ahead, but I'm able to easily keep up with them, and was even able to say things like, and this, when I tell you this, I'm not telling you things that seem amazing. These are things that I assume other people can do until they look at me like, how the F were you able to do that? And then I think, oh crap, that's another thing that I'm different on. And I'm only learning about my differences when now associating with other human beings, because you can't tell that you're different until you hang out with other people. That's how it works. I don't even know where to begin. The ability now, after doing the one-to-one function, so for example, I was able to explain to my teacher certain deeper meanings of words in Syriac, even though she's been learning it her whole life, and only she speaks Aramaic, which is like a derivative of Syriac. And of course she's she's fluent, it's her first language. Syriac she's been learning for a number of years, but I was able to explain to her the literal meaning of certain words because I understand the fundamental etymology of Semitic language of the clouds. And once again, she told me this today, and I just assumed that was obvious, but I explained to her how I did a mathematical transposition called a one-to-one function. To you, wife, and yes, definitely, absolutely, the Dome Father. He has to remain the Dome Father, my friends. So like and then I realized this is stuff I have to tell you guys. So I developed small algorithms that allow me to process what's going on. But one of these unusual side effects of these algorithms over the years is that they also allow me to predict behavior. And so if it's a situation I haven't seen, then I don't know what to do. But if it's one I've seen before, then I'm seemingly, now with all of this sort of evidence and immersion with other humans, I'm seemingly able to predict what to do and what other people will do and how they'll respond way better than other people. So people freak out that I can remember how people wear their hair, whether it covers their ears or not, what color lipstick they tend to wear out of the last 5 out of 6 weeks, which tables they sit at, what type of accent they use, how they pronounce their certain vowels, which people wear what type of makeup and to what degree. If I tell them, do they change? Do they have their ears pierced, but do they also wear actual earrings, or do they just have the ears pierced without the earrings? So my brain maps all of this stuff out, and then it does what you call linear functions, or linear, you could call it a transposition or a modulation, where you map one function onto another to find similarities, and it allows you to predict people's behavior if you've seen it before. And so every person that I've met so far is basically a sum of 100,000 variables, right? And the major ones of which you can use to then map them on top of people you've met in the past to figure out what type of person they are. You then figure out the tone in their language, whether it's raised up or raised down on certain words, all of this type of thing that's been going on. And sitting in public with all this noise, have you seen on the private scopes, talking to I started a new private channel. If anyone's interested, it's about relationships and how women taught me how to function. That's really how I learned how to function. And in fact, at the age of 20/21, a girl that I went out on a date with mentioned to me that I never made eye contact with her. And then that was the first time that I became consciously aware of the fact that I did not make eye contact with people. So I learned from that point to then make eye contact. And so each female that I was lucky enough to go out on a date with, was able to teach me one thing with broader visibility. Yeah, absolutely. So through these dates, I was able to enhance my horizon of understanding of human behavior. And one by one, with each embarrassing situation, I would then add to my repertoire of mimicking. And so over time, everything that you now see within me as regular behavior was learnt by one failed date. So it's sort of like Groundhog Day, if anyone's seen that movie, that really old movie with Bill Murray, and I forget who the other girl is, that one from 4 Weddings and a Funeral, I always forget her name. And she was Maybelline girl for a while until she got too old to do Maybelline ads. But anyway, yeah. So I don't even know where to begin. I was able to, I could barely read I was reading letter by letter. 30 minutes later, I'm flying through the Lord's Prayer, and I'm deliberately learning it so that I can speak it at this speech, because I'm giving a speech to Christians next Saturday after my autism speech. And the speech will be about the language of Jesus. And I discovered an interesting hypothesis a while back, which is that all of these Syriac communities left in the Middle East are all in difficult to reach terrain, or areas which have difficult terrain, which supports my hypothesis that the Arabs were unable to get into those areas with ease, and so those people were able to remain Christian with a lot of course, torture. So these things that seem so obvious to me that aren't even worth discussing are things that other people seem to feel are worth discussing. And it brings me now, in the last couple of months, to questioning, right, everything I think and whether it is of significance to share with you. So I get to this cast, and this is what the point I've been trying to bring up on this cast, which is I don't even know what to tell you, because there is so much stuff in my head now that I'm now wondering whether it is of significance to the point that it needs to be shared with you. So I don't even know where to start. I've got to do my ethics, I've got to do the mathematics, the quantum mechanics. It's just insane. We spoke about the new relationship channel. That one has just gone through the roof, and you can tell from the statistics, like almost every single person watched every single replay, and you know that that's something crazy that's going on. As we say, the square root of your number of followers produces 50% of your participatory viewership, and then square root of that produce what do you call it, 50% of that. So basically your core following works on a squared distribution. We determine significance and eat the fish and spit the bones. I like that idea. So basically I'll just throw fish at you and you chew on them and spit the bones. So what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to start with that book. What I did was, so I'll give you an example. Let me give you an example. So there is a word in Arabic called terut, right? And terut is to do with those who are sort of the misguided, those who have fallen astray, those who are really like, and they can also be seen as evil, right? In Islamic teaching. The problem is that word, right? That word, there. Okay. So how do I explain this properly? When I study French and Italian, it is obvious to see how they came from Vulgar Latin. You see, for example, like the word caballos came to cavalo, came to chaver in French. You know, you start to see all of these metabolizations, these metastasizations over time, and how words evolve and modulate and transpose. But there are certain words in Arabic that sort of appeared out of nowhere, and it doesn't make sense, and it never made sense to me. So as I started learning Syriac, I realized that when you write Arabic words in Syriac script, they can be mispronounced. And when you mispronounce them, they are actually Syriac words. So, for example, terut actually comes, it looks almost exactly like the Syriac word, and now I can't even remember the word. It was tayotho. Tayotho. And tayotho is someone who is lost, not someone who is transgressed. And it's amazing. For me, that's amazing because it shows that the words did not come from nowhere. They actually came from somewhere. And where they came from was actually Christian texts. And the word Quran on its own never made sense because the shape of the word in Arabic is not native to it. In fact, Arabic uses the Quranic Arabic as its basis for Arabic, even though there's a lot of these words that sort of appeared out of nowhere, which you could believe, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but you could believe that those words were given by God, which a lot of people do, and that's fine, that's their belief. But obviously, if you're looking from a scientific perspective, right, what is the chance that either terut was a magic word that came from God, or it was a misspelling of tayotho, because it looks exactly the same when you use the Syriac script? And tayotho is a Christian word which comes from the Christian encyclopedia in the Middle East called the Quran. The Quran, and Quran was mistranslated, or could have been mistranslated into Quran, right? And I'm not saying that that's the truth, right? I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying that now that I know both languages, it's exactly the pattern that you would expect to see, as you see in every other language that I've ever looked at and that anyone else has researched on YouTube or any language that exists. Every single one is has a mutated words that come from a language before it, right? Anyway, I don't know if it makes any sense to anybody, but that topic I wanted to talk about, and I don't know if I want to talk about it on Gabversity because it's not really scientific. It's just, it looks like it could be, but it's not provable because we can't go back into time and check. So what I'm thinking is I might do it on my VIP scope, and I'll go through one page, and then you guys can tell me what you think. The picture-based languages. That's cuneiform script. It is similar, but in a different way. So I'll give you the example. The Phoenicians were the ones who invented the concept of the alphabet because they needed a way to speak with all of these other cultures. But obviously at the time, the Egyptian Empire was the superpower, and they used hieroglyphs. Now they had a word for eagle, like the picture was of an eagle. What the Phoenicians did is that to them it looked like an ox, and the word for ox in ancient Semitic script was olaf, and so they called it an olaf, which became the first letter. So it wasn't the words that mutated, it was the letters that mutated from the pictures. So there was a different type of mutation, and olaf turned into alpha, it turned into alif, which turned into alpha, and olaf bait is alphabet, and that's where every single language in the world, like every single alphabet in the world, comes from the olaf bait, which was the Phoenician invention, which they gave to the they gave to the Greeks. They had Olaf, Bet, Gomel, Doleth, which is Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta. So Delta, it's exactly the same alphabet. But they had a few differences, like the word Ain in Semitic, they didn't have it, so they made it Omega. Anyway, but then from Greek came Cyrillic, and then from Cyrillic came the rest. But that's different to language families. That's the language families they were not able to mutate in the same way back when we were using cuneiform script, because a picture does not tell you how to spell a word or pronounce a word. So, and then another place might have a word with a completely different picture. So you don't actually, anyway. So there you go. That sort of gives you that. What's interesting is that the Arabs, or they were called the Nabateans, they did not use an alphabet. They used cuneiform. So they used hieroglyphics, just like the Chinese, just like the Egyptians did years ago. But they were quite behind. They used what you call hieroglyphs, or cuneiform. It's called cuneiform, which is similar to hieroglyphs. They used that up until they didn't even have a script up until about 900 AD. In fact, they used the first ever Quran that was found in 715 was written in the Syriac script, which is the script I'm learning now. And it's quite funny because it's sort of like, imagine trying to read Greek, like write English words in Greek. You know, like in Greek, the rho looks like a P. What else? Like the U is an M, the V is an N. Yeah, so you can easily get mixed up, and that's exactly what was happening. And why ta'yuth, or in Arabic, becomes te'rut, and why it's a word that comes from nowhere. I mean, it makes perfect sense. So it's just amazing how that stuff happened. Anyway, the other thing was with autism and relationships. I was going to say, for example, I discovered that I fell in love with someone called the Greek girl years ago, and I've only really been in love a couple of times, what I think is love anyway. And the Greek girl was unable to go out with me because she was afraid of how popular I supposedly was with other women, even though in my mind I only saw her, and that was it, man. Like, I was so completely into her. And she didn't want to date someone smarter than her, which is quite interesting. So I didn't realize that can be a problem with some people. And then what was interesting was that her mother started flirting with me a few years later, and her mother is married to someone who's friends with my dad. It was very weird, very weird. I could not understand that situation. So basically I told her I was in love with her daughter, even though it was years later, and then I stopped hearing from the mother again. Sometimes I get photos from her. She sent me photos today of flowers from a church, which I thought was nice. So you know, there was one girl, for example, that she just wanted to do whatever I wanted to do, and I said, do you have an opinion? And she said, do you want me to have an opinion? And that was quite interesting. So you learn about human behavior. That was the only way I was able to get exposure to it, because a group of guys, it was too difficult to calculate how to speak or how to function appropriately, and they would pick up on the weirdness pretty quickly. So by dating, because women have amazing hearts, and when they fall in love, they tend to put aside your weirdness. It was a way that I was able to learn about human behavior. But of course, a lot of that would backfire when we went and met their family or friends, and I would do things that they found odd, like sit in the corner and just read a book. Or if someone asked me how my week was, I would literally tell them, starting from Monday to Sunday, how my week was by the hour. And I would realize that their eyes would glaze over, because I started realizing this body language, which I learned from the first girl that taught me about eye contact. Right, and then I had to take that, bring it back to the future, which is now 10 years ago. But 6 years later, when I was 26, I had to realize that their eyes were glazing over and their blink rate was slowing down, and I couldn't understand why. So then my partner at the time didn't realize that I didn't know that if someone asks you how your week is, you have to say, good, thanks, how was yours? You don't actually start from Monday and go from morning until night and spend 30 minutes explaining how your week actually was. So interesting things like that. And all of these are their own topics, and I don't even know where to go and talk to you about all of them. We got to 299 followers, which is ridiculous. I don't even know why, but you know what? That's pretty cool. the thoughts that I hear about regular humans, it's quite amazing that I see the same patterns over and over, and yet we all think that they're exclusive to us. So someone who was not appreciated by their parents spends the rest of their life, their adult life, deliberately and even subconsciously possibly trying to become appreciated. And they might actually be quite gifted, but they undervalue themselves. They try to go out with people who show them that appreciation, and that tends to be someone who's a sociopath or a narcissist, who then uses that to get what they want from them, and then the cycle continues. It's just amazing that you see these patterns that are so unbelievably predictable, and yet these very same people still believe in free will, which is quite amazing. And for this argument, I'm not going to say it doesn't exist. I'm going to say at best it's limited, right? Because we have so much in terms of what can limit our capacity to make a decision. Yeah, it's quite interesting. The other thing is when I see guys in their early 20s who really, and this is normal, this is not bad, they really dislike, I say guys like me, I don't know if there are guys like me, but for example, and this is weird because 17-year-old girls to me look like children, right? Like it's really weird. Like they look like they're 5 years old to me, right? So when these, big rabbit hole for so many, when these 22-year-old guys are trying to flirt with 17-year-old girls, and instead of them giving those guys attention, they're giving it to me, who's a freaking basically middle-aged, right? It's weird because when I was 20, I would have dreamed to have all of that attention, as any guy would, and yet it was unbelievably, let's just say, it made itself inhibited, I guess, to put it politely. And yet now that they sort of they look like my first look when I look at them is like, my God, I'd love to have a daughter that beautiful, and one day I can get her married to a good guy. That's my first thought. So clearly I've reached some age in my head. And then they're looking at me, and I remember what it was like at 20. And so it's very bizarre to see those looks, especially now that I'm comfortable with the eye contact. And the looks back then, I read this book by Alan Pease on body language. So I started to learn to use my peripheral vision, because that's what women do when they pervert guys. So I started to learn how to do the same, because men don't have very good peripheral vision, which is why statistically men's accidents tend to be more from the side as opposed to from the front, because women in general are not as good as judging distance. They have much more sensitivity to color and much better peripheral vision, which is why they can find stuff in the cupboard when guys can't. But guys are very good at hunting moving targets, which is really not really needed these days, except if you're a Republican with a gun. So anyway, this is what I mean. I'm talking to you about like 20 different subjects. I don't know which one to talk about in detail, and they're all rushing around in my head like, 3-year-old maniacs who've just learned how to walk, and they're bumping into the sides of my skull, and I want to share them with you because I didn't deem them significant, but now I see them. Now that I realize that they could be significant, I'm seeing them run around. So I'm thinking, do I share them with you? At the same time, I'm exhausted. I really have to go study, but I just don't, and I don't know why. And if I do, I get upset because I'm still a failure. Because here's the thing, if you guys see what I can do, right? You've seen that in the last couple of months. I just told you what I did with Syriac, and like that language, of what I did with French and Italian, and you guys know that. And if you don't, go to Gabsmack, go to YouTube, go to First Live Autism Speech, and you'll see it. So all of these weird things that my brain can supposedly do, and yet I know that if I put myself in such a way that I could focus on one thing. So let's say I just focused on physics, right? As you guys know, I did physics as a joke, and now I'm representing the uni in the scholarship thing, right? So that's sort of insulting to people who try, and I really do apologize for that. I really don't mean it to be that way. But at the same time, we all know that it's sort of wrong in a way to not focus on physics completely, because I could potentially become one of the top physicists in the world based upon all of these achievements I seem to be able to do. The problem is, if I do that, then I feel like I'm failing at everything else I could have done. I could have been great on Periscope. I could have studied Syriac. I could have actually studied Greek. I could have done Hebrew. I could have done I could have done mathematics, and the list keeps going on. And so whatever I commit myself to completely renders me a failure at everything else that I could have done. And I know that that's stupid, and yet I still do it because, according to my psyche, there is a psychological need to feel rewarded and successful to make up for the first 25 years of constantly getting bashed, abused, tortured, unrecognized, made fun of, ostracized, demonized, etc. And that psychological wound has caused almost irreparable damage of the brain science. Yeah. So here we are talking to my friends here, my neurotypical friends on Periscope, in the Gabsmack think tank, to figure out why, how, when, where, what are we doing? Should I go home right now? It's only 10 p.m. and my brain is running around like crazy. So I could easily go home right now and talk about the Quran and the Arabic and the Syriac and the mistranslations. But once again, as my dad would say, you waste your time doing all these silly things like a child. You need to grow up and work very hard and do your university. So, I could take his advice, and just go study. And even study is fine because I can go on the Gabversity and study publicly, which is what I'm doing. My ethics stuff and the quantum mechanics is all actually stuff I have to do. So I could easily go do that. And yet there's something prohibiting me. There is a fear of success that I have, that I don't know if it's a fear or it's an inhibition or it is a resistance. You're probably not neurotypical. Well, everyone here is clearly a bit quirky. Otherwise, you would be watching Falling Cats like the rest of the world. So anyway, I may lose you because I'm going to get closer home. So yeah, focusing could be a way to go. Doing the quantum mechanics, maybe doing some astronomy. Yeah, we'll try that. Anyway, that's all I had to say. I mean, it depends on if any of those topics were deemed interesting by any of you. Please let me know, and then we can do them later on. Throughout the week. I'm definitely not. I'm not playing. Yeah, if I can't see your comments for a sec because I've just got to drive and I get really dizzy going down this hill towards the water. So yeah, that's the story. I mean, I hope all of you guys are well as always, and I know everyone's going through their own unbelievable trials and tribulations, as we all know, Dome Father and everyone else, and what people go through on a daily basis. And what's interesting is a lot of it in many ways is actually predictable, simply because we think it's unique. That's actually an amazing thing I've noticed about humans. The more unique we think we are, the less unique we actually are. And that's sort of a paradox, because in my case, it seems more and more that there is really no one like me, except maybe Daniel Tammet in the UK, who was able to memorize pi to 20,000 decimal places. I'm pretty sure I could do that if I wanted to, but the question is, do I want to? These are the questions. I mean, should I just focus on doing the quantum mechanics thesis, and then people can say, how many languages do you speak? My answer will be two. So I'm just a regular guy who's also a physicist. I mean, is that something I can live with? Can I honestly wake up every day and say, yep, that's Gabby, he's just a regular physicist who just happens to speak two languages? No biggie. Or, but the ego is a demon. The ego is a demon. The ego wants me to keep studying 6 languages just so that I can tell people, hey, I can, sort of speak 6 languages, barely. Like, what is the point? Seriously. Why is it not better to focus on, for example, English, and raise my level of vernacular to a skill set which would only manifest with deliberate devastation through an articulation? Don't limit yourself. Well, you're limiting yourself one way or the other, because if you focus on all the 6 languages, then I'm going to be shit at all of them, which I am. I mean, my Arabic is maybe amazing compared to most Arabs. Egos because of eating that damn fruit in Eden. Yeah, absolutely. So, but it is, my Arabic could be amazing, but it's not amazing. Obviously, like, I still, medical terms I'm not that good at. Jack of all trades, master at none. That's exactly right. And so the question is, do you want to be a master at one? See, I mean, yeah. And the thing is, the reason is because part of the motivation in doing it is quantified only by people's appreciation, and that is a bad reason to do anything. don't you get ego boost from helping others? No, what I do from helping others is I get a sense of self-worth. They're two different things. So that's a very good question, actually. So, for example, when I am teaching on six slang, and you guys saw me learn Spanish, like, you know, and all that stuff quickly, there are benefits to that, right? One of the benefits is that it's great to speak Spanish because I love learning new languages. The other benefit is that you feel like you are a boss, right? That's different to valuing yourself. So feeling like a boss is that feeling that normally comes before you absolutely stuff up your life, right? There's something about it's something to do with arrogance. When you get full of yourself, you know, it's a false inflation. And so what we've accidentally done is conflate two independent terms. One is ego boost, one is self-worth. Self-worth is a long-lasting feeling which basically lasts forever. And every time I help someone, it just adds a little bit to my sense of who I am. And so I feel amazing and I feel grateful and humbled by the experience. Whereas when I study languages, maybe 30%, look, you know what? With some of the languages, it's probably 50%, right? 50% of the reason I study them is just so that I can say that I can read those languages, right? And that is, as you guys know, a very bad reason to do anything, right? It's poisonous. That part is poisonous. And if I remove that part from me, there will be languages that I won't be motivated enough to study. And I will have to accept that, hey, I don't speak those languages. So, you know, like, for example, I learned French and I was able to teach it in 40 hours. Okay, that's great. But now I haven't been teaching it for years, so I can barely speak it, right? And I've spoken French to a couple of you directly. It's building in pride, which fuels ego. Yeah, I like that idea. I would say that's definitely on the right path. I mean, we're on the same path with that. Yeah, absolutely. So here's the thing: if I completely stop practicing French, then of course it's going to get worse significantly, right? So I might come back to just saying, you know, je ne peux pas le français très bien parce que something or other, you know, I don't know, whatever I'm going to say, ne veux pratiquer pas, you know, or whatever, ne veux pas pratiquer. See, I'm already forgetting. So the whole idea of the fact that I learned it in 40 hours and then it's disappeared becomes like a mirage, because it's like, hey, I learned it in 40 hours and I used to be able to speak it. What does that do for anyone? But what is the point of being able to say that I learned it in 40 hours other than to show off? What other possible benefit is there? Apart from the scientific, if I'm being studied scientifically, then I would say I was able to do that so that they could study me further and see what part of my brain could do that. So that would be a good reason to share that with some people. But if I walk down the street and said, hey man, I learned it in 40 hours, kiss my ass. Like, what does that do for anyone? It makes the other person feel like crap. It gives me a false sense of feeling like this false pride, which means that something bad's going to happen. And that always happens, right? Whenever you get full of yourself, something bad happens, right? It's so true. It's like this lesson. It's like you get kicked in the backside, you know, to be humble. So what is the point? Your word selection appears prideful, which I detest. Well, it depends. Like, I like to use the best possible vocabulary and articulate it in a unique way as much as I possibly can. And that's because it uses brain power, it keeps you alive, and it's powerful and memorable and it sticks. So those are reasons. And the reason of feeling amazing by doing it, you're right that it's always going to be there, but you always try to, what I try to do is I try to do things that embarrass me. So you guys saw, if any of you were on my VIP scope, I think when I went and gave you a tour of Coogee, and I was running around going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. You know, if anyone remembers, and it was really funny. By the way, that guy did give me the finger. He gave us the finger. I replayed it on 6 minutes 36, I think. Me too, but others assign value to those words. Yeah, and the thing is, yeah, what others do is not in our control, right? So if someone wants to think that, they can go screw themselves, as far as I'm concerned. They can go to hell, you know? Anyway. Let me just open the window because it's boiling hot in the car. Yeah, so if I go inside, I'll lose you. That's why I'm sort of staying here. Amen, yeah. Honestly, yeah, they can go to hell because, you know, everyone views the world in their own way, which I've come to learn. And you can say one thing and it'll be taken in their head in a completely different way. Even with my own mother and father, you know, it's amazing. My brother, who I'm certain is on the spectrum, probably gets me more than anyone in the world. And, you know, he'll see my mum reply to him and he'll look at me because he knows that she completely understood not what I said at all. And he understood what I said, so we'll just laugh. We've always had that unspoken bond, my brother and I. Anywho, so yeah, you have to do things that embarrass yourself, and I deliberately do that to humiliate myself. It's important to humiliate myself as much as possible, to completely bash the ego and destroy it and punch it in the face constantly. And it's actually a good feeling, because the more you do that and the more real you become and the more true to who you are, then the greater the satisfaction there is in what you do, because you know that you're doing it for its own sake as opposed to pleasing other people. And that's not to be confused with helping others for self-worth. They're two different things. Anyway, I think I've spoken a lot. So is there anything anyone wanted to ask? Yeah. And that's actually, I know here's another irony, but a lot of people, where am I? I'm in Sydney. I'm on Earth. A lot of, that's true. You know, that's very true. If you're not humble, you are going to get humbled at some point. And so you're way better off humiliating yourself voluntarily than have it done for you. That's so true. And what's funny is that, you know, I hear this a lot, but I hear a lot of Christians say to me, you know, you are more Christian than most Christians, even though you don't believe in God. And I thought that's really funny when I hear that, because I remember I heard Jordan Peterson once say that you can believe in God, not metaphysically, but through your actions. And I thought that was quite interesting, because I've always viewed, even though I view God as a man-made construct, I still see truths that are deeper than it, right? So and I see that it exists within us. And so when you do stuff when no one is watching, there is your own conscience watching, and you have to live with that, right? And unless you're a psychopath, that stuff eats at you, right? And if you're a psychopath, you'll get caught and you'll go to jail. So either way, when you mess with the fabric of the universe, you will get screwed at some point, guaranteed. That is Christians in name, that earlier reference. Yeah, and I mean, it's, once again, I'm pretty sure that follows the mathematical law, where the square root of the number of Christians probably represent the ones who believe in it at least 50% or more. And then if you want the ones who believe even more, you square root that, and it's a square root of a distance, which is very interesting, because square roots represent multi-dimensions. So normally, like, why does physics use mathematics is the code of the universe, right? This is so, I mean, to me, mathematics exists outside the universe, and it's timeless. And abstract mathematics teaches us that. It actually teaches that there is an infinite amount of numbers, and it would never be possible to get from the number 1 to number 2 unless you existed inside a universe that used pixels. And so we are all made of pixels. So we're sort of a computer program, whether it's God, whether it's an advanced race that made a computer program. We're probably some sort of holographic computer program, and this is scientifically very easily consistent. Actually, it's the most consistent thing so far. And so it would be very easy for the world to have been created, if you want to believe it was created in 6 days. That could have easily happened with a software program. Anyway, I don't want to get into that convictional or square rooted. Very interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting how the square root actually is related to 2 dimensions. And so, for example, you need the relationship between how much horsepower you need and the speed at which you go is a squared relationship. So, you know, the faster you go, like if you want to go double the speed, you need 4 times the horsepower. If you want to go 10 times the speed, you need 100 times the horsepower, right? Because of the fact that your screen is 2-dimensional, but the air hitting your screen is 1-dimensional. And so you get a squared relationship. Same thing with the Earth and the Moon. You know, we get squared relationships because distance is 2-dimensional and Earth is 3-dimensional. And so you have a difference of 1 dimension, which gives it a squared relationship. And, you know, it's interesting with the universe, you actually get a 4th root relationship when it comes to light and time, because the universe is in 4 dimensions, not 3. And that's one of the things that pretty much freaked me out when I started doing second year mathematics. and you start to study Einsteinian relativity and the expansion of the universe, and you realize that the universe is physically in 4 dimensions. Like the 4th dimension that we think is time is a physical distance. Our consciousness is hopping across the snake, which is our body, from birth to death. So our consciousness travels through time, but our body dies with each second that passes. It rearranges due to the laws of entropy, which were invented or discovered by Boltzmann, who ended up hanging himself because he was an undiscovered genius. Anyway, I don't know how we got onto that topic, but we'll probably keep going forever, so I might go and study. And does anyone have any questions? I reckon, what's the bet we've hit 300 followers by the end of this scope? Yay, Catherine and Helen. Hey, Helen, I wanted to hug you goodbye, but I always get confused as to whether that's appropriate or not. So I just stood there like an idiot. But you probably figured out that that's what I do, because I mean, a lot of these hanging outs with all you guys are all situations I haven't actually been in before, so I'm not sure how to replicate them. It just so happened that Helen, go for it. Yeah, Helen's really straight up. She'll just come and give me a hug straight away. So I'm like, okay. I never know what to do. Alrighty. Hug me anytime. That sounds so bad. Oh my God. Anyway, the Dome Father, Lord bless, and stay strong, you big bastard. You'll be fine, mate, with your family and the amount of support that you get. That's funny. Cool. All right, I'm out of things to say for now. You are more than welcome. And if anyone has any spare cash, go and get the Pro West t-shirt off this man and give him a bit of a confidence boost and boost of strength and solidarity, which will be even more graceful and beneficial for him and his family to go through these times. And this is what it is all about, the Pro West t-shirts, absolutely about our solidarity together. And what I would do for me, I'm going to get a shirt that has Pro West and True Liberal, because I want to brand them together. It is a beautiful compliment, and if I believed, I would certainly pray for you, but I definitely think of you a lot. And in the words of Helen, not like that. All right.